Can anyone hear that? Let's turn the music down now. Let's see, we can hear that. Hello everyone, welcome along to Space Dave Live. Nice to have you with us. So, what I was saying when you couldn't hear me was that in the last week or so I've made some radical changes to the whole way our broadcast system here is working, and I was very optimistic that it was going to make everything run much more smoothly, but there was a chance that it would all go up in flames. Guess what happened? It all went up in flames. Never mind. So we're only a few minutes into the show and I think we are up and running. So sincere apologies for all of that. Now it may not be the last thing that goes wrong tonight. So I've completely changed everything around. The whole thing feels kind of a little bit weird to me actually. I'm looking in different directions. We've got new hardware here. You'll see that I've changed the sidebar. It's over on this side now. So just bear with us while we try and work through this. I am hoping that overall we will actually get a better result in the end. I do see, looking at our comments there at our chat, that it doesn't look like Facebook has connected again. So let's just have a quick look there. No. There's the YouTube live chat's going okay, but I'm not seeing anything from Facebook. Never mind, Wendy and Alan out there in the audience are going to keep an eye on Facebook tonight, aren't you guys? Is that right? Cool, thank you. So they will just relay pertinent messages and stuff, and Steph's over there keeping an eye on the YouTube chat. So that was a bit of a hairy start. Apologies again everyone, but let's see if we can get things back on track. So we might as well, actually look, there's one thing that we need to do, because if I don't do it right now I'm going to forget, and this is really important. Crookie, are you watching tonight? I hope you are, because what I want to show everyone out there is we've got a couple of things. Actually no, sorry, I've just had a thought. That's not a good idea. I will get back to it shortly. It's not going well so far, is it? No, it's not going well at all. Don't let me forget that there's an important thing that I need to do. So we're going to have a look at our program and try and get moving along with things. So there's a lot of spaceflight news tonight. It's probably mostly spaceflight, a couple of cool astronomy stories, but it is going to be a lot about rockets and things like that. So, I mean, you can see what's going on there. We'll try and have a quick talk about what's in the night sky. I think Mercury and Venus in the evening sky. If we don't get a chance to talk about that later, then get outside just as it's getting dark and see if you can spot Mercury and Venus just after the sun has set. Might have a rant tonight. We'll see how things go, see how I'm feeling, but hopefully we will fit that in tonight. There's one other thing that I want to show you before we start getting into the news. Actually, yeah, I will show you that now, and then we'll get back and we'll talk about the competition and whatnot. This is a video that I had actually meant to show you last week, but we sort of, I forgot actually, I think was basically what happened. But have a look at this video. This was a video that I recorded back on the 4th of October. This is a view from the International Space Station, and it's New Zealand. You see the South Island at the top there? This is sped up 5 times, of course, but I thought this was a lovely video and I wanted to show it to you just quickly. Now, this is not the feed that has died, unfortunately. There's still no good news with that feed. This is the sort of the second feed that's not as good quality, and you don't actually usually get good views of the Earth from this feed, so it's quite unusual to get this one. But there's the North Island. There's an interesting angle, eh? I thought that was very cool indeed. So there you go. That's just about the end of it there. So we won't be seeing very many more of them probably for a while. It doesn't really look like that main feed that we used to love has got much chance of coming back online. Anyway, let's get back and just cover some more of our housekeeping, because we need to talk about our competition. Now this is actually going back to the countdown video at the start. So last week someone asked us why we have a long countdown video at the start, and I mentioned some technical reasons why we do that, but I forgot to mention, of course, the other side of it is that it does give everyone a chance to realise that we're live. People that are getting notifications have got time to get in, and it really helps a lot if you can actually get in live. Right? If you're even just a few minutes behind, it kind of mucks up the interaction and stuff. So that was part of it. So my question is that actually useful? Is it good to have several minutes of the countdown video beforehand just to get the audio set up and all that sort of stuff, and to see that we are live? If so, what's a good length for it? So I'm sorry it's a bit of a lame competition, but it would be useful for me to know if we actually do need to carry on with that countdown video, or we could try and cut it down or get rid of it. It's also a good chance, of course, to thank our Patreon supporters, so there is that as well. But the prize for tonight's competition is another one of these. I think it's our last one actually, donated by Janet Yort. Thanks again, Janet, for donating these, and we might chuck something else with it as well. Now, I am aware that there is someone out there who has not received their prize yet. I am so sorry. I am going to try tomorrow and catch up with my messages and get that out to you. So remember, you can support us on Patreon. You know the deal. Go and sign up. That's how you do that. And thank you so much for all our Patreon supporters for being on board with us. So I'm just going to have one other quick look at the chat just to see if our Facebook thing's showing any signs of life, and it's not. And I'm afraid, now someone did point out recently that we could try and log out and back in, but look, I'm not even going to bother trying with that tonight. Sorry, we need to keep things moving along. Is there anything in the chat that we need to talk about so far? No? Okay. Let's talk about some news, shall we? I think we should talk about our rocket launch schedule. So quite a bit going on at the moment, but we have talked about quite a lot of it, so we probably won't spend too much time talking about what's coming up, but there's a few of the recent rocket launches that are worth a mention, and I think I might start off with this one. This is the Russian one. Sorry, hang on, I've got it. Oh, that's just thank you. So yeah, this is the Russian Proton launch. And this had a couple of things on it. They had the French communications satellite, but the one that we're interested in is the one called the MEV-1, or Mission Extension Vehicle 1. That's it there. This is just a CGI part of it now. That's it being deployed. Now, this is a cool thing. I love this. This is the first satellite that's ever been launched with a plan to go and fix other satellites or extend the mission life of existing satellites so they don't become space junk. So this one's actually on its way out to meet a satellite, and it will join up like that. This satellite's getting low on fuel, you see, so it's going to end up being space junk. But this satellite can join up with it and fix its orbit, sort it out, give it a new lease of life, and then when it's finished with that one, it can actually leave and then go off to help another satellite. So what an amazing mission. It's going to take quite a long time. I believe it's actually next year sometime before it even meets the satellite. But really, really cool, interesting mission, and I can't wait to see how well that one pans out. So let's see, that was the MEV-1 mission. The other one, the next one to look at was one that we have already covered. It was the Ionospheric Connection Explorer, and there it is there in its launch vehicle. So this is the Pegasus, and this is the one that launches from underneath an aeroplane. So that's it coming up to be mated to the aeroplane. You see there, it just gets joined up underneath it. Awesome, eh? So there you can see it's just being joined up there. And I've got a little bit of a video here. It doesn't show you much. There's a little bit of audio with it. So this is on the plane. It was nighttime launch. 2, 1, drop. There you go. See it's away. Dropping away, and then off it goes. And we don't really see much more after that. But I just thought it was worth showing you that launch. We've already talked about the mission itself, so we probably don't really need to go over that one again. But one we do definitely want to have a closer look at is Electron, of course, New Zealand's rocket lab. So that launched just recently as well, so we'll bring that video up. Now this was, of course, Rocket Lab's number 9 mission for the Electron, the 5th one for this year, and it was a flawless launch. We would expect nothing less from Rocket Lab.
8,
let's have a look.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off.
Might have been a bit loud, sorry. So the next bit of the video here, by the way, is the shot looking back after this one from the rocket looking back down, which I have sped up. I've done this before. I just think it shows the ascent quite nicely from Mars here. So that, yeah, that is 5 times normal speed there. So this was a single spacecraft, as we mentioned last show, for a Astro Digital satellite company from California, and the mission was called the Palisade Technology Demonstration Satellite. Now this mission actually launched to an altitude of over 1,000 kilometres. Now this bit here, that's the first stage separation, falling back down. That's the one that they're going to be looking at reusing in the future. At the moment, that stage that you see falling back down just gets discarded, but they are going to be reusing that in the future. And this mission does include some sensors to help gather data to work towards that eventuality. That's a beautiful shot looking back down there towards the Earth that I put in there just for you flat earthers that I know enjoy the show. And a nice shot here looking back down with the kick stage and the payload of it there. heading off to where it needs to be. So, yep. As I say, another flawless launch. Twice as high as Rocket Lab has ever launched before. So that is really cool. We probably don't need to talk too much about the rest of that mission. Actually, there was one kind of interesting thing in this. With this launch, the trajectory, they had to avoid a thing called the South Atlantic anomaly. That's that area of the South Atlantic, or over the South Atlantic Ocean, where they experience more radiation than the rest of the world does, and so that can have quite a nasty effect on spacecraft and things. So they had to actually adjust to go around the South Atlantic anomaly, and that's a bit of an issue for the space station and a couple of other things as well. While we're on Rocket Lab, they have just had a new extended launch license from the FAA, the American Federal Aviation Authority, thank you. So up until now, Rocket Labs, they have to get a launch license, not just here in New Zealand, but from the FAA as well, because they're launching for American customers, etc. So instead of having to apply for a new launch license every single launch, they've now got a single launch license that covers them for the next 5 years. So that will help expedite their process as well. Their Launch Complex 2 in America is coming along well. They've had some good progress there. And we've got a video that they've just put out that we may be able to show you later on, depending on time, or perhaps on our next show, just looking at Rocket Lab's launch facility. It's quite a nice, informative video, actually. It's really cool. So I think that was everything that we wanted to talk about in the launch schedule. Did anyone have a stab at what that rocket was on the side? Because I forgot to ask you what it was. It's probably a bit late now. But if you are interested, that rocket on the side, I can tell you what it was. It was the Delta IV Heavy, lifting off with the Orion capsule on a test mission a few years ago now. So I think that is everything that we needed to talk about there. Now, Anne is asking, what was the biggest rocket ever made? Who wants to have a go at that? Yep, I think you're right there, Alan. The Saturn V, that was the rocket that launched people towards the moon. So that was the biggest, most powerful rocket that has ever been launched, and we certainly do not have anything quite the same at the moment, but some of the new rockets being constructed now are in the same league now as the Saturn V. They just have not flown properly yet. So we've actually got a model of a Saturn V over there, and it describes how big and how heavy it was. I can't quite remember. I think it's 800 elephants. Is that? Anne, you tell me what it says on there. What is it?
How many did you say?
800 elephants?
400 elephants.
400 elephants, sorry.
36-storey building.
36-storey building. So there you go. It's as big as a 36-storey building, Anne.
Which is 111 metres.
111 metres.
And 400 elephants weigh 2.8 tonnes.
Yep.
And it's as powerful as 30 Boeing 747s.
As powerful as 30 Boeing 747s. Cool. Thanks for that, Ange. And thanks for that question, Anne. So where are we up to? We're only just getting stuck into our space news, aren't we? So let's still talk about a couple of New Zealand things with Rocket Lab. So the New Zealand Space Agency has just released this. This is a list of all of Rocket Lab's payloads. You remember we've been talking about this. We had that competition about it and quite a lot of discussion about should Rocket Lab be forced to reveal all of their payloads and customers. Well, that's what's happening. So there's actually a whole list there. What you can do is you can go down and you can click on any single one of them and find out about it. So look, we'll just start at the top here. And you get a sort of a breakdown of everything that was on it. It's sort of a simplified version. You might be a bit more nosy and want to have a look down. And where's all the military ones? Here we go, look at this. United States Air Force, what are they up to? What are they sending up in our rockets? Well, you can go there and you can check it all out. So I think that's really nice. We've got really full open disclosure coming from them now. So it's every single one of Rocket Lab's payloads. And from now on, I think the plan is, let me just consult my notes here, is to release these quarterly, actually, from now on. So, yes, quarterly. So I think that's pretty good news. I think everyone should be quite happy with that. Now, still with Rocket Lab, it just was in the last day or so, they've just announced that they're getting ready to be able to deliver payloads not just into low Earth orbit, as they have been doing so far, but all the way to the moon and beyond. So the link's in the show notes if you want to go and read more about that. But onwards and upwards for Rocket Lab, it's all on. Good stuff. One more New Zealand story here. This is about the New Zealand Space Agency, kind of. I don't know if anyone's seen this in the news, but hello, on Trade Me, the New Zealand Space Agency is up for auction, up for sale. Start price is $3 million, but they're hoping for $30 million. Now, if you're wondering what on earth is going on here, this is not actually the New Zealand Space Agency. This is a guy who has a company called New Zealand Space Agency that he would like to sell to you for $30 million. Yep. So Scott Savage, a New Plymouth-based inventor, started up apparently this company a while ago. There's some dispute about exactly when he started his business, but according to his own description on the Trade Me page here, you are bidding on the company name, website address, so you get the website address and that's your lot. A website address that you could have gone and registered online for a few dollars, but now you can buy it for $3 million to $30 million. What a strange story. So anyway, maybe that's all we need to say about that. But honestly, I cannot see a single thing in there that has any value whatsoever. But if you're so inclined, you can go and bid on that if you want to. Let's go on with some other news, because the next bit of news, we're heading overseas now. It's a little bit of a sadder story, this one. This is Alexei Leonov, who some of you will be familiar with, a legendary cosmonaut. We've actually got a sort of a wall of fame for some of the most outstanding astronauts up here at the Space Centre, and he's on there. So he has just passed away on October 11th, aged 85. Here is a picture from his younger days. Now, he's known for a couple of things, but he was the first person ever to do a spacewalk, to go outside his spaceship. Now, let's have a quick look at some video of him doing that. This is the spacewalk. Now, this was back in 1965 in the Voskhod 2 mission, and his EVA, or spacewalk, was 12 minutes long. Now, look, it's hard to overstate how much of a risk these early spacewalkers were taking when they went outside. No one knew if this was really going to work or not. It was really an extreme risk for him to do this, and in fact, he very nearly died. When he went out on a spacewalk, what happened was the spacesuit actually inflated so much that he couldn't get back inside again. So he had to actually open a valve and bleed out some of the air from his spacesuit so that it would squash down enough to get back inside his spaceship. Wow, what a guy. Legendary. So yeah, it was really quite something. So in fact, there's a really good movie. Now, the movie's gone by a few different names. Spacewalk, The Spacewalker, Age of Pioneers. I've put a link in the show notes to the IMDb page about it. I'm not actually sure where you can watch it. I'm sorry about that. I have seen it myself. We saw it at the Observatory in Hamilton. It's a Russian movie with subtitles, but it's a fantastic movie, and it's really quite emotional, very well made movie, very impressive graphics and everything, and I do recommend it. So that was probably what Alexei was mostly known for, was being the first person to do an EVA. But he was also selected to be the first person on the moon. If Russia had got there first, he was actually going to be the first one on there. So if things had gone a little bit different in history, this could be our Neil Armstrong. So it could well have been. Of course, that was cancelled, but then in 1975, he was actually selected to command part of the Apollo-Soyuz mission. We've talked about that on the show before. So this was the first cooperation between the US and Russia in space. So you can see the model that they've got down there on the left is an Apollo module, on the right Soyuz. And so they went up separately and actually docked together in space, and sort of showed that that was technically possible, but more importantly, that the sort of Cold War of space was over, and this was sort of working towards the countries actually working together. So really important historical mission. And so you can see Alexei there, he was the commander of the Russian side of that. Now, I've got one more picture from this. This is an artist impression of that mission when they were docked in orbit. And I have a question for you. Do you know who the artist was who painted that picture? So let me know if anyone answers that. Anyone want to have a stab at it? It's not an easy question. I don't expect anyone to get it right. But if you know who painted that picture of this mission, let us know. So there we are. R.I.P. Alexei Leonov, legendary astronaut. More recently, much more recently, there's been a bunch more spacewalks, or EVAs, up on the International Space Station. We've already talked about that. They're in a phase of doing about 10 of them, I think. So this is the one of the ones. This was actually the first all-female spacewalk. So it went very well. This one lasted a lot longer than 12 minutes. It lasted, if I got that right, 17 hours? That doesn't sound right. I might have made a mistake on my notes there. Ooh, I'm glad I didn't have your microphone up there, Alan. Alan's making a comment about the females on the spacewalk. We're actually going to get back to that a little bit later in the show, and there may yet be some controversy to come on this one. We'll see how we go with that. 17 hours doesn't sound right, does it? I think I've made a mistake there. I've got 17 hours and 17 minutes. Normally, you would expect these to last maybe sort of 8 hours or something like that. Someone tell me if they know how long it actually lasts. But they replaced a failed power controller and completed a bunch of other tasks. They actually did some get-ahead tasks to help with future ones. So that all went very well indeed. So we need to talk a little bit more about what's happening with moon stuff and that sort of thing. So let's talk about the Artemis mission, NASA's mission to get people to the moon. They have just released their new spacesuits, our first look at their new spacesuits for that. So we're looking at two spacesuits there. The one on the left is the EVA suit, so that's kind of the main one really. That's the one that you would be out walking on the moon. Now, I believe they can actually be configured to do EVAs in space as well, but they're quite different, of course. The ones that they wear on a spacewalk like this, for example, you don't really need your legs, so you don't need to worry about mobility in your legs when you're just floating around. Your legs are actually just pretty much in the way there. But if you want to walk around on an environment with gravity, it's a whole different story, and you have to have a different kind of spacesuit. So I've actually got a little video here. I think we can show you that. Just bear with me a quick sec. So this is at the announcement when they first released it to the public, a NASA event there, and we can see one of the engineers that worked on the suit coming in. You see it swiveling backwards and forwards and stuff. I had to feel sorry for this poor woman. The first test that she's got to do with a spacesuit is walking up some stairs. That's a bit tough. But it gave it a good test out, because that would be quite challenging in a suit like that. But you see, because you have to walk around in it, it really is a whole different kettle of fish. And so what they've done with the more modern designs of these suits is that swiveling motion. And that's quite different to the way that the spacesuits were designed originally to go on the moon. The first spacesuits that they had on the moon were very cumbersome and difficult to walk around in. These have quite a different design. They've got that funny look, They kind of sort of look like they're hunched over like this a little bit. It looks a little bit weird, but they've actually got a lot more flexibility in their movement. She's actually doing these sort of movements on purpose to show that you can do that in the spacesuit, movements that you couldn't do in the old style spacesuits. So very impressive. It's still under development, but pretty close to finalised now. All the main parts of it have all been finalised. So yeah, those rotating joints are probably the biggest part of it. You see, even with this suit, that bending down, you'd never be able to do that in a spacesuit that's just designed for floating around in space. So even with this suit, it's a little bit difficult. But she's doing a pretty good job of it there. Now, the other suit that they had there, the orange one, that's the emergency suit. So that's not actually one that you would use for doing an EVA or anything. That's just when you're on the way up or back down to Earth. If anything goes wrong, then the orange is an easier colour to spot from a distance. So that's just an emergency survival suit, really. It's really the one on the left I think we're probably more interested in. So that's pretty neat. That's the Artemis stuff. Now, it's not all good news for what's happening with the Artemis program. There's a story here on Ars Technica. Jim Bridenstine, NASA administrator, has been to a House committee meeting. Now, as we've talked about in the past, the Democrats are controlling the House at the moment, of course, and we suspected that they are not going to be fully on board with this whole thing of getting people back to the moon by 2024. I guess if there's any good news is that they do at least seem to be on board with going back to the moon. But as they have pointed out, the 2024 deadline seems to be too ambitious, and they even commented politically motivated. So as we've mentioned before, that would be President Trump's last year in office if he was to be re-elected, and that pretty much seems to be the only reason that you would pick that as a year to be back on the moon. Now what's happened is that they have made it pretty clear that they would prefer to go back to the original deadline of 2028. So I think it's not going to be a surprise to anyone, but I think that ambitious goal of 2024 is looking pretty shaky now. However, NASA is still committing to the whole thing. They've just announced some more budget to give to Boeing to produce more SLS rocket stages, so that's still full steam ahead. In fact, I think that's probably all we really need to say about that at the moment, is it? Yes, let's talk about something else. So we were still talking about the moon, though. I just wanted to show you some pictures here. This is from India's Chandrayaan-2 mission. So this is the one where the lander failed, but of course the orbiter is still orbiting around the moon, and it's doing very well. And it has taken a whole bunch of photos which India claims are the clearest photos ever taken from lunar orbit. So the link's in the show notes, but there are some beautiful photos here, and giving us some really quite clear photos of the surface of the moon. And I have no reason to doubt that these are the clearest from lunar orbit so far. That's at least what they are claiming. So nice to see that, that the orbiter part of the Indian mission is still going well. Still talking about the moon, have a look at this fellow. This is planned to be the United Kingdom's first moon rover, which they are hoping to launch in 2021. This is a four-legged walking rover developed by a UK startup called Spacebit. So rovers, of course, normally have wheels, not legs. But there are quite a few advantages to having legs. You can get into a lot more tricky places, for one thing. So, they're planning to send this to the moon in 2021, and that will be on the maiden flight of the ULA's Vulcan Centaur launch vehicle that we have talked about before. So this is a pretty hardy robot. It's designed for mobility, and it's designed to last the lunar night. So, things get ridiculously hot on the moon during the moon's daytime and extremely cold at nighttime. But this one is designed so that it can last day and night. So all the best to them. I hope that goes well. What have we got?
Guests at the artist.
Well, we've got two guests at the artist. Okay, then who?
At the artist?
Yep.
Alan Bean or Bert Winthrop?
Okay, I am not familiar with Bert Winthrop, I'm afraid, but Alan Bean is certainly a very good guess. He is an astronaut that is well known for his paintings. So that's actually a good guess. The correct answer is Alexei Leonov. He painted it. He was actually an artist himself as well. In fact, he originally wanted to be an artist. And he, I believe he went back to doing his artwork and everything. So actually quite a talented artist. So there you go.
And actually Christine Roberts actually said that.
Oh, okay then. Christine, thank you for that.
And I've got a question from Ian Latimer, and it's from his wife.
Yep.
Why are the EVA suits on the ISS white and not another colour? I'm guessing it's a visibility thing.
Righto, so why are the EVA suits white and not a different colour? You were guessing visibility. Now, visibility is definitely a part of it. The main one is actually heat. So overheating is a concern. So now it's actually a bit multicoloured. That was one of the comments that actually did come up a little bit about this one is not entirely white, is it? There's quite a bit of other colour there. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure why there's so much other colour there. You will notice, I wonder if we can have a look back at this one. Yes, the one on the left there, I can't remember who was in command of this one. I should have known that. Sorry, but anyway, the one that has the red stripe on it, that's usually the commander, so you can identify them. But you can see those suits are quite white, aren't they? So yeah, that's mainly what it's about. It's about helping to control the heat. So thank you for those questions.
And I've got one more.
You've got one more? Let's keep going.
It's not a question, it's a comment. Derek Flood.
Yep.
According to the New Zealand company's website, New Zealand Space Agency was formed 26th of April 2018 by a guy called Scott Savage. He trades as Sadistic Limited.
Okay, thank you for that. That's right. So now, his claim was that he started his business back in the 90s and that the New Zealand Space Agency or the New Zealand government should have known about his business and not picked New Zealand Space Agency as a name because he was already using it. However, he had not registered it as a company back then. He hadn't done any trademarks or anything. His business has never done anything. So I'm not sure how he thought anyone was supposed to know about it, because it literally was just a name, not even a company name back then. The New Zealand government came back with, we've done our due diligence, or we did it at the time, and we couldn't find anyone called New Zealand Space Agency. So there you go. He's quite aggrieved that they've stolen his name. I think that was a big part of it, really. But yeah, the fact that he's only registered it last year, I don't really think he's got a leg to stand on. But who knows? He might make his fortune selling it for $30 million. Best of luck with that one, Scott. Was it Scott? I think I got his name right. Yeah, thank you. Goodness me. Yeah, it's hard to know what some people are thinking, really. Now, we want to keep moving on. Let's just talk quickly about Boeing. I've got a few quick things to get through here. Boeing's got a bit of stuff going on. They are actually taking a $20 million stake in Virgin Galactic. This kind of thing is not unusual with space companies. It's a little bit like airplane companies and things that they buy each other out and buy stakes in each other quite a lot. So Boeing is actually taking a big stake in what is their competition, really, in Virgin Galactic. Virgin Galactic, for their part, are pretty happy with their progress. So you're familiar with the Virgin Galactic thing, the Spaceship One and stuff. We've talked about them quite a bit on the show before. That's what it looks like there. So this is a space tourism vehicle, which I think he said, hang on, let me just go back to my notes here, because I put it here somewhere. Yeah, Virgin Galactic CEO George Whitesides says the company is on the final stretch of testing and should be in operation next year. So they're hoping to get up and running with their space tourism next year, and I think they've got a reasonably good chance. It's taking forever, of course. They've had a lot of setbacks, but hopefully they will have some good news next year. So there's a couple of things with Boeing and Virgin Galactic here. So talking spacesuits, actually, Virgin have released their new spacesuits, although technically these aren't actually spacesuits. They won't be going outside their spacecraft at all. So this is, I don't know if it's really particularly functional. Maybe a little bit, but I think it's more about looks. And of course, there's the man himself looking resplendent in his cool spacesuit. I think it looks pretty cool. I'd be happy to wear one of them. But let's see, Virgin Galactic is also planning to send CubeSats to Mars as early as 2022. So that's a bit of a different thing for them. So they announced this on Twitter. So what's happening here is that this thing they are hoping to launch on their Launcher 1. So that's different to Virgin Galactic's space tourism thing. This is actually a launch vehicle very similar to the one that we saw just before on the Pegasus. It's the same kind of thing. So scientists and engineers from Virgin Galactic and a Poland-based satellite company called Sat Revolution and about a dozen Polish universities have all teamed up together to design the world's first dedicated commercial small satellite mission to Mars. And so they are hoping to launch that, as I say, in 2022, not next year's launch opportunity to go to Mars, but the one after that. Now, just 1 minute there. There's one more thing that I was going to mention about Boeing. And that's their Starliner. That's that capsule that you can see in the background there. So this is one of the two vehicles that NASA is looking at to get people back to the International Space Station without having to buy seats on the Russian Soyuz. So there's SpaceX's Crew Dragon, of course, is the other one, and then we've got Boeing's CST-1000 Starliner. And they have just announced that they are hoping to have an uncrewed mission, a test mission to the International Space Station before the end of the year. Now, SpaceX, of course, has already had their equivalent mission. That was the one with Ripley on it. You remember that one, that right back at the start of the year? So that was their version of this, getting a spaceship to the station and back without people on it. Now Boeing's going to do the same thing with theirs. They're actually hoping to have a pad abort test very soon, actually, before November the 4th, and then the orbital flight test, they're hoping to launch on December the 17th. So I think that is everything that we wanted to say about Boeing and Virgin Galactic. Now we have something...
we have two things. First of all, from Mike Sigley, that the spacewalk was 6 hours and 32 minutes. I'm assuming he means the recent one with the two female astronauts.
Thank you for that, Mike.
And also from Noah McClellan, in 2025, SpaceX is sending people to Mars. Do you think that will make it?
No. No. Thank you for that. So, yeah, Elon's very optimistic, isn't he? He's very bullish. But 2025, I suspect that you might actually be looking at an old source there. I don't think even Elon himself would be thinking that they would be sending people to Mars in 2025. But no, look, people going to Mars is a long way off. I hate to say it, but it's a long way in the future. I don't know if I'm going to live long enough to see it. I hope so. I think I've got a chance, but no, it's a long way in the future. So if I had to put money on someone to do it, I'd be putting my money on Elon probably, but certainly not in 2025. Absolutely no chance whatsoever. Well, I don't know. You never say never. I mean, I was pretty sceptical about the whole Starship thing, eh? And, you know, they're going on in leaps and bounds, so... But I guess the thing is that they've still got a lot of problems to solve. It's not like Elon's all talking about our rocket's going to be ready, but there's a lot of other stuff to consider there, Elon. You know, it's not just, is your rocket going to be ready? How are you dealing with all the radiation? Have you talked about all the psychological issues, how people are going to be able to perform when they get to Mars? There's an awful lot of work to be done there before you're going to be sending people. So, no, I don't think there's any chance, but I would love to be proven wrong. I sure would. Let's see what's happening on Mars. Have a look at this. This is something that we have been talking about a lot, Mars Insight. This is the one with the digging thing, the probe that's been, you know, it's been having problems forever. So this is actually a few images, one after the other. So what are you guys laughing at there?
We thought we liked your very technical term, the digging thing.
The digging thing. The mole, actually, the mole is its proper nickname. I should give it its proper nickname, the mole. I can't actually remember what the technical name of this instrument is, sorry. But this is the thing that's supposed to, well, it actually bashes down. It doesn't drill. It's supposed to hammer down about 5 meters below the ground, and it's about measuring the internal temperature of Mars. But they've been having all sorts of problems with it, and it just hasn't worked. And they've been working on it for ages. They have made some progress with it. So what's happening here, so I'll just go back and start that video again, even though it's just only a few frames really. But what they found was that the soil appears to be a lot more powdery than they had expected, and it turns out that this thing needs friction as it's supposed to be hammering down, and it wasn't getting any friction, so it's just kind of boom, 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 not really doing anything useful. So what they're doing is that they've got the scoop out there, which is not designed for this at all, but they've got the scoop out there, and they're sort of pushing the scoop up against the probe to try and give it some friction, and that is actually helping. So it's actually gone a few more centimeters. So that's hopeful, but it's still a long way to go. A few news places are reporting that it's all back in action now, but that's not really the case. That's only going to work for probably another 10 centimetres or so, I guess. After that, it's going to have to be the soil itself that's giving it the friction. So some good progress, but it's certainly not out of the woods yet, not by a long way. How's that time going? Oh, like, shucks, look at the time. I might just have to zap through some more of these stories, I think. Shall I tell you what? We'll just have a quick squiz at this one. Because the links are in the show notes. You can go learn more about this if you want to. That's a pretty boring looking paper. Researchers discover how water molecules can be regenerated on asteroids. This is all about the question of where does water come from in space, and how does water keep getting replenished out of nowhere? Well, these researchers have, I'll tell you what they did. They took a meteorite that landed in Australia quite a long time ago, about 50 years ago, I think, and they used a specially built machine that mimics the conditions of an asteroid's surface in space. They then used energized electrons to simulate solar winds and lasers to mimic small meteorites slamming into the surface of the asteroid while monitoring the water molecules on the surface. And the result was oxygen and hydrogen atoms bonded and created water. So they haven't actually observed anything happening in space, but they've simulated the conditions in a machine on Earth and found that with what they expect to be happening in space, that water is actually forming out of oxygen and hydrogen atoms. So I thought that was pretty neat. If you want to go and try and wade through that paper, the link is in the show notes. There's another thing that I definitely do want to mention though. I can't remember if we've talked about this on the show or not before. This is the interstellar comet. Does that sound familiar to any of you guys? Have I talked about this? I should have done. But anyway, this was actually, it's a comet that was discovered back in August by an amateur astronomer by the name of Gennady Borisov in Crimea. So comets are often discovered by amateurs, of course. It's one of the big areas where amateur astronomy really shines. But now, a team of Polish researchers has calculated the comet's path and traced it back outside our solar system. They've actually traced it all the way back to a red dwarf star system 13 light years away, known as Kruger 60. So they need to do more observations to actually confirm this, but I think it's looking reasonably confirmed already. So this is the second object that has been discovered in our solar system that appears to have come outside our solar system. The first one, of course, was this one, Oumuamua. We've definitely talked about that on the show before. This was a really strange object that came through our solar system. And a lot of people speculated that it might have been an alien artifact because it was doing something funny with its orbit. But that's been and gone now. And so this is the second one that seems to have come from outside our solar system. Now that Oumuamua one, we never actually really figured out where it came from. But this one is the first one that we've been able to trace back and say, it came from that solar system, which is such an amazing thing to be able to do. There's so many interesting things coming out of this. So, so far it looks like a pretty normal comet. Certainly visually, that's what you would expect a comet to look like through a telescope. And in every way that we've been able to measure so far, it does seem the same as the comets that we have in our solar system. So that's giving us some good information, that this other solar system does have comets like our one does. So it's teaching us about other solar systems as well as our own. Now, the thing with these things is that they just come flying through our solar system and we don't really get much chance to be able to study them very well. So we've got about another year before we lose this one completely, but that's not enough time to actually launch a mission to it. So we can study it with telescopes and things, obviously, but it would be really cool to be able to have some missions kind of on standby to be able to actually go to the comet and get a really close look at it. Imagine being able to do a sample return mission on an object from another solar system. Wow, just stunning stuff. I never imagined that we would be able to do this. Now, so there's a big case to be made. I think that we should be more prepared for these things when they come through our solar system. However, one recent study suggested that there could be as many as 1,000 or more, perhaps even thousands of these objects at any one time going through our solar system. So I think this is a really promising, cool area of research. Let me just show you a couple of quick videos here. Actually, this one is just a short animation taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. Ignore the colours in this one, but this shows you how it looked through the Hubble Space Telescope. But there's another video here that shows you its actual path through the solar system. This is a bit more interesting. So it came at our solar system from what you would call the northern angle from the solar system. It comes down towards the plane of our solar system where most of the main planets are, through there, and then sort of heads off down south back into interstellar space again. So I think that's pretty exciting stuff. Okay, is anything happening with our chat and things? It looks like we have got something out there.
Yeah, we have a question from Casey.
Yep.
Does that mean future spacecraft can harvest water from space?
Well, it's probably not directly related to that so much, but because we already know that the water's out there. I think really the question was, how come there's all this water there in places where it should have all disappeared by now? For example, on asteroids. So what we were looking at there was really how was the water being replenished, I guess. So the water should have all gone, but there's still some there. This is showing how it can keep coming back. So it's not directly related to whether or not we can access it. But yes, everything to do with water in space is looking pretty promising. It's looking like, yes, we can go out there and there are sources of water all over the place in space. So, which is good news. It's good news for us, for exploring out in space, and it's good news in our search for life out there in space. Right, so actually we're doing okay for time, but there's another couple of quick stories that we will just whiz through here. Oh, I'm supposed to try and fit in a rant tonight, aren't I? Oh yeah, we better do that. We don't want to upset... And that other thing too. Thank you guys for keeping me on my toes. So look, let me just quickly, I'll just mention these last couple of stories here. This one is Well, the headline is gas waterfalls might be feeding atmospheres of young planets. So really this is all about how gases work in protoplanetary systems. I think if you're interested in that, the link is in the show notes. You just go and check it yourself. The other story that I did want to give a quick mention to was the Nobel Prize in Physics for 2019 has it's actually been split in half. One of them is the guy on the left and the other one was jointly between the two on the right. So the link in the show notes to the actual Nobel Prize website, and it will tell you all about it there. But it's quite nice that all of the stuff to do with the physics prize this year has gone on astronomy-related things, and in particular, well, actually, the guy on the right there. Oh, I did learn how to pronounce his name, and now it's gone. Actually, Mum, you tell. It's a French name, or Swiss. The guy is actually. Yes. Didier Queloz. That is pretty much, I think, everyone in agreement with that? Yeah, I think we're all happy enough with that. But anyway, he's the guy who discovered the first ever extrasolar planet. So, yeah, planet in another solar system. And I've put a link in the show notes to a video with him just talking about his work and what he's done. So go and check that out. A nice Nobel Prize there. And I think the last story I will mention here, this is related to a thing that we have discussed on the show before, about galaxies that have lost their dark matter, or galaxies that exist without their dark matter. So if you recall, there was some people had claimed to have found some galaxies that did not have any dark matter, which implied that dark matter can be separated. It's a physical thing that can exist separately from the other matter. Then that was all thrown into doubt. Now someone's come back and said, oh, actually no, here we found another one. But although they're very confident, the argument is still ongoing. If you are interested in that, links in the show notes, go and check it all out and see where the argument is up to right now. And that is all of the main news stories that we wanted to get through. So just bear with me for a moment. Turn my mic down while I do that. Excuse me, because it's this time. My crowd likes that. Okay, so look, as often seems to be the case when I do these rants, I've picked something that I'm not actually that passionate about, to be honest with this one. I will try my best to get worked up about it, but the thing is I don't actually really have a strong opinion about the issue itself. I do have a strong opinion about the discussion around it. So let me try and explain. Of all the, it's another little preface here, of all of the rants that I've done, this one is probably the most dangerous one for me because I'm talking about issues of gender equality. Specifically, the audience is already, be careful, Dave. Well, and I need to be careful because I can tell you, when you are an aging, white, middle-class, straight man, when it comes to issues of gender equality and diversity, no one's really interested in your opinion. When you're in my demographic, you can keep your opinion to your damn self. But anyway, so normally for stuff like this, I just wouldn't touch it. But I'm talking specifically about that EVA that we were talking about before, the first all-female EVA, and also to some extent this whole issue of the first woman and next man back on the moon. So what happened was when this EVA happened, it was very, very heavily promoted as the first all-female EVA. Now you may recall when this was actually supposed to happen some time ago, I actually just commented briefly on it then, and there was an interview with one of the astronauts who was actually getting really upset about the fact that the reporters kept going on and on about the fact that it was an all-female EVA, and it was actually Anne McLean, one of the astronauts there, really ended up being quite blunt with the reporters and telling them that they just needed to stop talking about this and get over it, and she was here to talk about the work that they were doing, not the fact that they were women. And she was actually getting really agitated about it, and the blimmin' reporters wouldn't let up. They didn't want to hear about the work that was being done. They just wanted to talk about the fact that you're a woman doing this, or that you are both women. So look, it's the EVA when it happened, NASA themselves have been very, very heavily promoting the fact that it was an all-woman EVA. and certainly reporters have done the same sort of thing. So I've been looking at some of the arguments about it. So my question is, should we be making a big song and dance about missions like this? Should we be focusing on the fact that it's an all-woman thing, or a first for feminism, if you like, or however you want to put it? And it seems that there are arguments for and against. So I'm really just sort of relaying the arguments that I've seen online and I've heard people say. So on one hand, we want to celebrate these things. We want to use missions like this as an example that this is sort of normal activity and that females are doing this thing. Really, well, the argument I keep hearing is that we need to encourage young women and girls to be able to get into these sort of fields and know that it's okay for them to become an astronaut. Okay, so that's the argument. Young girls need to know that they can be astronauts too. If someone's got another argument why we should be making such a big deal about this, let me know. But that's the argument that I've seen. The counter argument is that once we get to a point where girls are already thinking like that, then it's not just unnecessary, it can actually become counterproductive. So imagine this, I've got a group of school students, and we're all talking about becoming astronauts, and they're asking me questions about how I become an astronaut and stuff like this, and I'm telling them, yep, you could all become an astronaut, and I point to a bunch of girls and I say, and even though you're a girl, you can become an astronaut too. You can imagine how well that's going to go down, eh? Yeah, so exactly. So I am in two minds about it, because I know that in some cultures and in some families and in some places, young females might not see that as a career option for them, and maybe they do need to be getting that message, but I think that message is already there. Now, I had a little bit of a chat to a couple of my female co-workers out here today, who have worked with me with school groups and stuff like that. Now, none of us can ever remember anyone ever asking us if women can become astronauts. When they ask about becoming an astronaut, they ask questions like, how old do you have to be? What things do I need to study? None of them ever ask, I'm a woman, can I be an astronaut? Just about 2 or 3 hours ago, we had a large group of intermediate-aged kids here, and I did a quick little straw poll, a little bit of an experiment, and I asked them to raise their hands. I started off by saying, let's say you want to be an astronaut and you are concerned about some of these things. Tell me, raise your hand if you think any of these things would be an issue for you wanting to become an astronaut. Your age, which country you come from, how much you weigh, your gender, your education, how tall you are. Put your hand up. So I went through them slowly, and out of all of those things, the only thing that not one single kid thought would be an issue was gender. It was the only one that every single boy, every single girl just couldn't see that there would be a problem with that. As I say, I've never had anyone ask the question. And so I guess what I'm saying here is that, in my opinion, in my experience, that message got through years ago. Girls growing up now already know that they can be an astronaut. It's not an issue, and I'm concerned that we are now in the stage where it's counterproductive to bring that up. If I say to a bunch of girls, and even though you're a girl, you can be an astronaut, maybe I'm the one that's actually planting the seed of doubt there. They didn't have any doubt before I opened my mouth and said something about it. Now they're wondering, is there something wrong with being a girl? So I don't think we should be making that much of an issue about it. I do think it's worth noting. I think it was worth a note that it was the first all-female astronaut. Are you guys laughing at me back there?
No.
Am I getting myself in trouble?
No, I'm laughing about comments that are coming through.
Oh, the comments. Do I want to look at the chat?
Take your spacesuits.
Okay, here we go. Maybe we better not take a closer look at the comments. Anyway.
What happens when you raise it?
Then we start getting things thinking about, maybe we should have pink spacesuits. These people are astronauts and cosmonauts. We've had them since 1963. Why are we making such a fuss about it?
That's from my mum. Does anyone else want to comment out there while we're taking comments from the audience?
They're doing it already.
Yeah.
we're doing it. So I do think it's worthwhile noting, like you said, Dave, that it's a first. That's definitely worthwhile noting, but not going into any other detail. There's no need for it. No.
Right, thank you guys. Now, I looked on NASA's YouTube page around the time of this, and they don't post a lot of videos on their page. The 4 most up-to-date videos all had headlines about the first all-female EVA. It was all over NASA. I'll just go over a couple of other quick things here because our time is running out. But it's not just the first all-female EVA, of course. It's this whole thing about the first woman and the next man on the moon. I've given them a bit of gentle ribbing about this in the past, but excuse me, NASA has obviously been given a directive, all the employees at NASA, that when you talk about the mission, you're not allowed to say the next people on the moon. They just don't say it. They say every time, every press release, every interview, everything, it's these exact words: the first woman and the next man on the moon. Now have a look at a couple of pictures here. So these are just the 3 images that I picked for tonight's show for other unrelated stories. Okay, I haven't cherry-picked this at all. This was just random. So the 3 things that I had from NASA that talked about the moon, you can see I've circled it there, the first woman and the next man. What was the other one? The other one was, about the spacesuits, the first woman and the next man. This graphic, which actually I think I didn't show you, did I? Sorry, I didn't get back to this one, but this was about the spacesuits. On that one, it's exactly that same wording, and they just keep going on about it. So what's happened is that NASA has committed to sending a woman to the moon, which is fine. We're all happy about that, aren't we? There's no problem. But they have committed to sending a woman before they've picked the crew. So, that's going to raise questions, isn't it? So if they had just kept their mouth shut and just announced a crew that included at least one woman, no one would have batted an eyelid, would they? No one would have said anything at all.
It kind of needs to be the best person for the job. Not male, not female, the best person for the job gets it.
It's exactly right. And of course now we're in that danger zone where people can now accuse NASA of sending a woman just because she's a woman, because they made such a fuss of it. If they had just announced the team, no one would have said a thing. Hey, no one's been commenting that females are in space for the last 30 or 40 years, for goodness sake. So anyway, I said I didn't have a strong opinion on this. It turns out I do. I just need to work myself up a little bit about it. But look, the actual point I really wanted to make about all of this is that we need to have this discussion. Do we still need to be doing this sort of thing? How much do we need to be celebrating these things? How much should it just be a casual mention? Because the real problem I'm seeing at the moment is that when people try and discuss this, they are getting shut down. I saw a thread about it on Reddit, on RSpace, and the moderator had posted a message at the top saying, don't even bother with the comment section, it's all toxic or something. But I had a look down, it wasn't. It was perfectly rational discussion, but some people are getting really, really upset that we are talking about this. And I think we do need to talk about it because we're all interested in equality, aren't we? All the sensible people, and I'm just concerned that we may not be going about it exactly the right way. Wendy?
I think that NASA's actually starting to trivialise women.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't make it special anymore. It's actually like
It's special though. It's just the astronauts.
Yeah, and that's. I'm going to leave this on a couple of notes here. From actual, there is one quick graphic that I should show you here. I got this off a Wikipedia page today. According to the National Science Foundation, women comprise 43% of the US workforce for scientists and engineers under 75 years old. For those under 29 years old, so the younger generation coming through, women comprise 56% of the science and engineering workforce. Now that says to me, we no longer have a problem with trying to get females into science and engineering, okay? Right. Well, in fact, I have heard exactly that. Alan was talking about the issue with males. I have had more than one New Zealand science teacher say to me, you don't want to be worried about women. If you want to be worried about gender equality, the fact that boys are dropping out of these subjects is actually more of a concern. So anyway, just to finish this off, a couple of other still shots here. This one was actually going back to that interview that I was talking about before, and Anne McLean had actually, she stated really quite eloquently and very clearly that female astronauts are just routine and it's uncomfortable. She didn't like it at all. She said she felt really awkward and it was just silly trying to make a big deal of it. And the last thing I will leave you with is a link in the show notes here. Awesome here, eh? Yeah. Cool here, but you can see where this is going, and so the link's in the show notes if you want to go and read it. She makes quite a good case for saying that this whole thing is just absolutely ridiculous and we just need to get over it and move on. There you go. I need to wrap that up, and I think that's all I want to say about that. I will see how many subscribers I've lost over that comment afterwards. Yeah. Okay, so sorry, did you have something else out there?
Did you want? They're saying about Crookie.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. We have, but there's something else that I want to do as well. And let's see. How's the time? Yeah, so it's time to wrap this up. So there is something else actually I want to do, and I want to show you guys these two things here. Can you see them? Everything's backwards, you see. So those are two mission patches from Rocket Lab. Okay, so we've had an anonymous donor give us a bunch of these patches, which I think is really nice. So thank you. I know you don't want your name mentioned, but thank you so much for that. Now, as part of this, the anonymous donor was watching a show some months ago now, I think, in which a young man called John joined us via Skype. And it was noticed that John had some stuff on his wall, but he didn't have any space stuff. Now, this person has asked me or John to pick one of those two patches, so only one of them, and take that home to have on his wall. So I would like to come out here and, hang on, let me just come out to the crowd here and ask John if you would like to pick one of these patches.
Yep.
That one there, you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, you're happy with that?
Yeah.
Congratulations, young man. Well done. That's yours to take home and put on your wall. So that was a very cool thing to do. Thank you so much to our anonymous donor for doing that. Now, the other thing we've already done, so I think actually that is pretty much everything. Our competition, we didn't do any reminders about our competition, did we? It's a little bit late now anyway, but just so that you know, our competition was to ask you a question to help us out. Is our countdown video helpful? Did we actually get many replies to that? Yeah. You got heaps of them? Oh, cool. Are we ready to do the competition? Yep. Okay then, so let's bring the astronaut helmet up the front here somewhere, and we will ask someone to pull a name out of the hat. John, would you like to do the honours tonight and pull the name out of the hat? You're the man of the moment. Okay, pass it over. Ian Latimer. Congratulations, Ian. You have won the prize there. So, yeah, good on you. Now, was there anything else we needed to talk about on the chat? Okay, everyone happy? Last chance for everyone to have a say, because we are just after 8 o'clock now. So, look, hang on, there was...
A very quick question from Ian Latimer, as it turns out. Yeah. Would the female astronaut get the same wage as a male colleague?
Yeah, that is a great question, Ian. Now, just interestingly, on that Wikipedia page that I got that from, I strategically left out the part about wage disparity, which was a little bit unfair of me, but that's not what we were talking about. But no, you do make a good point. Do they get the same pay? Now, look, honestly, I don't know, but I assume that NASA would be into pay equality. You would kind of hope that surely they would, eh? Yeah, they wouldn't want to get caught out on that one. So, nice question. Thank you, Ian. So, anyway, everyone's happy, eh? That's oh, hang on. Something else?
Yeah. I hope everybody watching this has watched Hidden Figures, the movie.
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah, Hidden Figures. If you have not seen Hidden Figures, it's a fantastic movie. We took the whole family along to see it. Yeah, it's about female workers at NASA in the very early days. It's a great movie, and by all accounts, pretty much historically accurate. The things that were not accurate about it were not that important. So they actually did a really good job of it, I think. So with that, now look, here's the thing. Just before we sign off tonight, I mentioned about all the big changes here. Now, we did have some nasty issues right at the start of the show. Apologies again for that. But here's the plan. The plan was, if all of this kind of worked okay tonight, and in the end it sort of did, I think, the plan was we could go back and try weekly shows again. So, yeah, are we happy about that? Do we want to go back to weekly? Okay, so with that, I will say we'll see you back here next Wednesday, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to try really hard to push the heck out of the show until the end of this year. So we will be back here next Wednesday, so hopefully we will see you back then. So in the meantime, thank you very much, Ange, Wendy and Alan for helping out with the chat stuff, and all you guys for coming along tonight. Really appreciate you guys being here. So good night, everyone. Hopefully we will see you back again, same time next week. Good night.